Hey everyone, and welcome back to sgCarMart Reviews. Today, we are driving the all-new Maserati MC20, the brand's first ever mid-engine two-door sports car. And look at it, it's beautiful. This is Maserati's first foray into this particular segment, one that has been dominated by two other Italian brands and more recently a British one as well. So this exotic supercar or sports car segment obviously is a tough one to crack. That said, I think the MC20 looks the part. So overall, I like that it's a sleek and purposeful silhouette and it's curvaceous in all the right areas. At the front, I especially like how all the lines really just converge down to this narrow nose at the front. And if we move on to the back, the design of the rear of the car, yes, it's a little bit on the simple side, but I like it, it's purposeful and it just works with the overall design language of the car. One thing I do like though is that we have this like plexiglass engine cover, and from here you can just look down and see the V6 engine inside. Perhaps not so much for you as opposed to just for people who are walking past and staring jealously at your car. So if you check out the boot, you don't actually open the boot by knocking it, someone's in the car. Here then you can fully then see the engine, and somewhat sort of untraditional for a mid-engine sports car, you actually have a rear boot here. It's not very big, and one other thing to note is that it gets very hot. I mean, the engine is literally just there. So whatever you put inside, make sure it can deal with high temperatures. The party piece, of course, butterfly doors. So the MC20 has a lot of these exotic sports car ingredients, but at the same time also have some of your expected compromises as well. So for example, it is quite low, ride height is pretty low. So if you are going through car parks like I just did, it's slow going. I mean, there's a lifter to help, but it's still fundamentally a sports car. And while I will admit these butterfly doors are pretty damn dramatic, they do have some practical concerns. So one reason why actually Maserati chose this configuration is the fact that it actually does create a pretty big aperture. So getting in and out is actually not hard at all, so that's quite a nice thing to have. However, this does limit some of your parking options. So what do I mean? The car is thus wide, but because of these doors, you basically need to be able to park with this much more space on either side of the car just so that you can open the door. So it's not a case where you can half open the door and come out. So obviously you need to be a little bit picky about where you're going to park. HDB car parks probably not going to work out too well unless you're on the top floor. But then again, I suppose if you have money to buy this car, I think you should have ample private parking options. Now let's go check out the inside of the car. The Maserati MC20 is priced at $788,000 without COE. The 3-litre twin-turbo V6 engine produces 621 brake horsepower and 730 Nm of torque. The 8-speed DCT transmission brings the car from 0 to 100 km/h in 2.9 seconds. For more details on the Maserati MC20 or any other car, head on to sgCarMart.com to help you make a smart choice on your next car. So the interior of the MC20 is actually surprisingly usable. Obviously, this is again in the context of a two-door sports car. So for example, we have a digital instrument cluster and you can configure it such that you can actually display a full map display. And this infotainment system here, it actually works pretty well, I must say. By itself, it has navigation, you can do your climate control settings here, some of your car settings here. And this one also comes with wireless Apple CarPlay, so that's a nice thing to have in a car like this. What else? We have a wireless charging pad here. We have this knob to control your different drive modes. It's a little bit of a toyish looking knob, but that's the job. And overall, like materials wise, I think these seats are very nice. You have like Alcantara leather, some carbon fiber here, so it's a kind of typical sports car space. What's slightly not typical is the fact that honestly this cabin feels kind of spacious, and I know that's a crazy thing to say about a two-seater sports car, but look at it, right? I have a decent amount of headroom. I can sort of move myself about. It doesn't feel cramped in any way, and even here we have like a small shelf to put I don't know, stuff. One cup holder here and a little small cubby hole here. But overall, I like this space. You know, it doesn't feel like typical supercar in the sense that you don't feel cramped, you don't feel like, oh, some of these things have just been thrown together as an afterthought, you know. Everything feels well composed for a fairly comfortable driving and owning experience. One feature that I think this car really sort of nails is this, the digital rearview mirror. So obviously we've had this feature in some other like SUVs and sedans, but in a sports car, like it's almost like the most obvious thing to do, because you know, if we just use the normal mirror, like you're not going to see anything, right? The engine is there. And this is obviously a problem that plagues a lot of mid-engine sports cars, so I don't know why every sports car doesn't just have this. But yeah, you know, that's really it for the interior. Now let's go drive this car. The Maserati MC20 uses a newly developed V6 twin-turbo 3-litre engine, and Maserati says that this engine uses F1 technology. What does that mean? Well, there's quite a lot of like complex engineering jargon that goes into it, but I think the sort of simple way to look at it is that the idea here is that at lower revs and at lighter loads, you know, it's smoother, more usable, and then obviously at high RPMs you have maximum power. And my god, this car is ridiculously quick. So we have 621 brake horsepower, 730 Newton meters of torque, which means that 0 to 100, 2.9 seconds. And that's crazy, right? This is one of the quickest cars I've ever driven. And so, yeah, you know, it has all of that straight line speed. And it's interesting because if you really look at the numbers, they aren't mind-blowing numbers. There are a lot of cars actually that have bigger sort of BHP numbers. But because this car is made using a fully carbon fiber body, it is very light. It's under 1.5 tons. So when you just poke the throttle a little bit, it's very ready to pick up speed. It's very easy to sort of get going. So there's always that sense of, you know, just drop it a gear. There's that sense of it's always ready to go, and that's why it's as fast as it is, right? It's because it's light and it has plenty of power as well. So is this a track day star? Well, I can't tell you. I don't have a track, so we can't really fully test out this car's dynamic capabilities. However, you know, Maserati conceived this car as a sports car both for the track and for, they say, grand touring. And I must say that actually that grand touring part of it, I actually do think they've done a pretty good job, you know. So we're just driving along normal roads and the car is actually quite agreeable. Obviously, you know, this is in the context of a typical two-seater sports car, right? So we have a bunch of drive modes, and also each drive mode we have adjustable, you know, damper settings. So we're now in the GT setting, and this is like the softest mode, and it's actually quite comfortable, you know. I don't have to like drive my way around bumps on the road. This car can take the bumps. You know, it is, yeah, it's a bit bumpy, but you know, it's a freaking sports car, right? And overall, I think the big thing about this car that I think makes it quite different from some other sort of exotic sports cars is the fact that it actually can feel quite relaxing, which is not something you can typically say about a lot of cars in this segment. And I think that's fundamentally down to the engine. So again, because it has a lot of that low-end torque, and it's an engine that doesn't need you to chase the red line to feel the performance and feel the excitement, you can then kind of use all of that sort of performance, right? From like 30 to 80, 40 to 90, you can sort of push it a little bit. Ooh, okay, get on the brakes, and then, you know, you can do all that, and you don't feel like, oh, the car's like, oh, come on, go faster. You know, it's always fast enough. And I think as a result, yes, I can conceivably see myself driving this car from, I don't know, Singapore to KL. I think it's very doable, you know, even in one sitting. I don't think you'll feel like back pains and your butt pain, that kind of thing. So the other thing that people obviously wonder about is the sound. And well, let's be honest, the MC20 doesn't sound like what you imagine the Italian two-seater sports car to sound like. I mean, that's partially the fact that this is a V6 engine, it's not a V8 or V12 that you typically find in some of the other cars, so you don't have that same kind of soundtrack. But also, you know, this is a very sort of turbo-heavy car, and actually, the engine itself is actually not very loud. What you're actually hearing a lot of the time is actually that turbo like spooling and whooshing and making all that blowing noises, and it's different. It's kind of old school, you know, in a way, and I must say it's quite fun. It's entertaining in its own right, right? It has its own kind of personality, which, to be honest, it's nice. It's interesting. So the Maserati MC20, is it a will buy, won't buy, or go try? For me, this is a go try. Obviously, this is an expensive car. It's not a car for most people, but if you are somehow shopping in this sort of sports car segment, I think this is a car that you should try. I think the biggest challenge this MC20 actually has is to do with expectations, right? So first of all, it's people's expectations, you know? When people typically look at a two-door mid-engine Italian sports car, you imagine something that's, you know, that's noisy, that's showy, that's a little bit sort of over the top, and yet at the same time not very practical, not very comfortable to drive daily, but you know, that's the concession you make for a sports car. And yet when you drive this MC20, you realize that that's not the case here, right? It's not very shouty, it's not particularly obnoxious as far as how it sounds, and yet at the same time it's actually kind of comfortable to drive. And the next part of it is, I think, also from the brand's expectations for this car. So, you know, from a design and branding perspective, positioning, and even to some of the marketing materials that Maserati uses, you know, it packs this car against the likes of your Lambos and your McLarens and your Ferraris. So I think there's also that struggle in people's minds as far as what the brand represents, right? So I think there is this struggle for this car to meet those expectations, and as a result, I think it might be a case where this car's a little bit misunderstood, which is kind of sad, because I really do enjoy this car. I think it's a very interesting car. I think it's a nice car to drive, actually. And even like pricing wise, right? So when you think about your Lambos, your McLarens, your Ferraris, those are $1 million cars, and this, it's not cheap, but it's not $1 million either. So actually, to that point, I think perhaps a more interesting or relevant context for this car might be your high-end Porsches and your Aston Martins, stuff like that. So I would say that the MC20 actually, it exists in a different kind of space, you know. Maserati wanted to make a sports car that also had grand touring capabilities, and I think this is a good show of what that means. How good of a sports car is this? I can't definitively say for now, because I haven't had a chance to drive this on the track, but I will concede that it perhaps doesn't feel as focused as some of your more track-oriented models. It's a little bit more relaxing to drive and a little bit calmer in that sense. And I like that, I think it's interesting, and I like interesting. Alright, so that's our review of the new Maserati MC20. What do you think about this car? Let us know in the comment section below. Do also like, share and subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified of our upcoming videos as well. And check us out on TikTok, we are at sgCarMart. So until the next video, I'll catch you soon. Bye! See, this is a problem when you don't have an IU. Accuracy will be the different story.